Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Evolving Skies, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, we are going to be looking at the new Tsareena V from Fusion Strike. Let's get into it. The basic concept is that we're a pretty low maintenance 2-prize attacking Pokemon here. Tsareena has a grass and colorless in its attack cost, so we can use capture energy to get multiple Pokemon into play. We also have grass in our costs, so we can use the likes of Leafeon for early acceleration in the opening stages. And we're hoping to reach 2 hit KO numbers with Tsareena in general here. All the while, Queen's Orders is removing lots of coming into play ability Pokemon, the likes of Eldegoss, Crobat, Leafeon, like I said in the opening stages, but also some nice one-prize Pokemon like Galarian Zigzagoon, Chatot, and the like, so that we can spam these effects, bring them back by Ordinary Rodding and using Rescue Carrier here, especially for the lower hit point stuff, to get multiple activations of these effects. So really interesting, a throwback to Mega Gardevoir, for those who remember it from Steam Siege. So yeah, it's a card that I used to really adore, and that's why I'm putting a good amount of time into Tsareena. Let's have a look at the Pokemon then, because this is going to be quite unconventional compared to most lists. For Tsareena V is the only attacker in the deck, so Queen's Orders is literally all we're going to be using here. 200 hit points isn't that great, and it does have a 2 retreat cost, but it does have the Queen's Orders attack, which is the entire build around here. For Grass Colorless, 20 Blaze, plus 40 more for each bench Pokemon you discard. So there's a few instances here. So really we're trying to fill our bench every single turn. If we do that and keep one benched Pokemon, we're doing 180 damage here with the Queen's Orders. And that's enough to 2-hit KO VMAXs, which I think is already like reasonable into the 3-prize matchups. But then we also have the Galarian Zigzagoon here with Headbutt Tantrum, hopefully pushing us over the edge into that damage threshold where we can get to 200, 220, that sort of thing over a couple of turns. Because what we can do is we can Tantrum early, then Queen's Orders. Even if we're like 20 or so damage off, you're just a Rescue Carrier away to double Headbutt Tantrum and finish off a fellow 2-prize Pokemon. So that's kind of how we get 1-hit KOs in 2-prize v 2-prize matchups, and for the most part, outside of that, we're going for the 2 shots on the VMAXs, which is interesting. And of course, we're a grass type, which means we're very solid into Umbreon and the single strike matchup in general, because Queen's Orders can really punish Umbreons coming into play, and means that it should be very easy for us to take KOs. And let's not forget, if you're in situations where you believe that you can tank hits against some lower damage threshold Pokemon, you can either discard your entire bench, or you can just, leave excess cards here and there that are getting damaged by these spread decks. So you just completely remove them from play and take away their option to target multiple Pokemon and really reduce their overall damage output. So Queen's Orders really is interesting here. Onto the Pokemon then. So we're playing a couple Leafeon V. It's a really good early game capture energy target because you can Greening Cells to end your turn, just to give yourself an extra energy drop. And I think that's important when you have a 2 energy attack cost. We don't have much other acceleration here. It's just early game attachments, attaching per turn, 1 Leafeon usage most likely, and then Raihan to keep up if we are up against fellow 1-hit KO decks, really. So that's going to be important for you. And it also means that if you're missing turn 1 attachment, at least you can Greeting Cells to end your turn, and then you'll be threatening a Queen's Orders turn 2. A couple Eldegoss V and 4 Crobat V, so we can spam their coming into play abilities, clear them off the board with Queen's Orders, reload them with Ordinary Rod, and try and use them again later. Like I said, Raihan can be super important, so Eldegossing these back is nice. It means we can skimp out on our actual support account and then still have access to recovering them later on with the help of Eldegoss and even Chatot, whereas Crobat is just drawing us cards throughout the entire game, which is really nice. And then we are playing 1 copy of Liepard V. It's a Pokemon means of tool removal, which is really nice. Like I said, against some 2-prize decks, it can be very awkward if they are caping up, so having Liepard that we can again reset with Rod to remove these capes can be a great way for us to still 1-hit KO these 2 prizes with the help of Zigzagoon, which we play 3 copies of, and I think it's, again, super important to deal with 2 prizes, so that's why we're playing 3 copies here. 2 copies of Pumpkaboo, giving us a removal of especially Path of the Peak, because we are quite Crobat reliant, and it means that we don't need to play stadiums here. Basically, we're shoving everything into the Pokemon slots. The Liepard could be a scrapper, but instead it's a Pokemon to increase our overall number of Pokemon. Pumpkaboo, similar deal here. It's a reusable means of stadium removal so that we can answer Path of the Peak with a lot of outs here. We have Pumpkaboos, Quick Balls, and Level Balls, so much higher chance than it would be with us just having a number of stadiums here. So that's always pretty nice. Then we have the Chatot. Yes, it's a coin flip, but it's a means of getting back stadiums and supporters, and that's usable via Rescue Carrier, which is our main sort of reload item here to get multiple Pokemon back. And then we are playing one Pyukumuku. It opens up Carrier, Quick Ball, and Level Ball, all to be options to draw additional cards here as well. So it's a panic option. Of course, you're actually allowed to put it into play in this deck. Because you can Queen's order it into the discard pile for then Rescue Carrier to be an out to draw cards the following turn. So an interesting one of, again, for exactly this list. And timing the pitch of Pyukumuku is certainly an interesting one indeed. Onto the trainers then. We are playing one copy of Ordinary Rod. Like I said, it can help reload the likes of Liepard. Can reload Tsareena as well if you only have like 3 copies or something like that. You have the carriers that can allow you to get all these lower than 90 hit point Pokemon that we're playing. 3 copies of Switch, because we still have a relatively high retreat cost on some of these Pokemon. And if we are going to get trapped or that sort of thing, you can just switch back out. Because usually we want our board state to end our turn with just 2 Tsareena in play. So if our opponent is gusting up the Tsareena that we don't have energies attached to, we're going to want to switch back out of there. And of course, in the opening stages, you want to switch into your Tsareena. We have so many Pokemon that aren't Tsareena that you'll start with non-Tsareena Pokemon quite often. Then we have a lot of Ball Search, the Level Ball, and the Quick Ball to get multiple Pokemon rolling as quickly as possible. So we're dealing damage with our Tsareena. And then we are playing 3 Cape of Toughness because our natural hit points of 200 is quite low. So buffing out our Tsareena is a really big deal here. So much so that if we have been able to maintain our attachments throughout the entire game, if you tank a hit with your Tsareena, you can retreat Tsareena, use your other Tsareena to then discard it from play altogether, and then you've effectively like healed your Pokemon in a way. You set your opponent an attack behind, essentially. It can only be used sparingly on turns where, for example, you've gone first and got that Greening Cells and turn attached, because then you maintain a head on attachments and can actually use another Tsareena and discard it. So yeah, that's really helpful. And in general, just tanking hits, even if you're not retreating and discarding your Tsareenas, is obviously going to be a big deal for us when we are 2-hit KO based predominantly. Onto the supporters then. We play a couple copies of Boss and Marnie. Of course, we can get away with the slightly lower counts here because we have a lot of Crobat draw and we have Eldegoss Chatot to try and recover these cards. Then we have Raihan, a really important supporter in the deck actually, so that we can maintain those Tsareenas, especially against higher tempo decks that try and capitalize on the Tsareena early game and can one-hit KO them quite easily. We're going to want to chain our Raihans whenever possible, and for research just because it's a deep dive into the deck and is just stable throughout the game whenever you're not relying on some of these other supporters. Onto the energy then. Like I said, we can benefit from capture. It allows us to get that Leafeon down early as well for extra development. And of course, you always want to back up Tsareena on as your only bench Pokemon, so Capture Energy is live and really important for the majority of the game, and then still playing 6 basic energy, so we have good amounts to see in the opening stages, because you never want to drop an attachment, and yeah, you want to also get some in the discard pile for Raihans as well. This will naturally happen, obviously, when your Pokemon are getting KO'd. So yeah, a good amount of access to these cards every turn to not whiff an attachment, because that is something you really don't want to do with this deck. Onto the full list then. Pause now if you want to, always in the description below as well. For some tech options, if you want to go away from your reliance on Raihan, you could potentially try and play EXP Share instead of Cape, for example, and use these as your method of chaining your Tsareenas, and that would actually open up Clara to be an interesting supporter option instead. This would guarantee a lot of Pokemon out of the discard pile and maintain your energy attachments as well. Right now, I'm leaning into the Raihan that little bit more, but Clara is a potential alternate option. And then we have a few other interesting lower hit point Pokemon we could be trying to play in this list. Galarian Meowth doesn't seem to have too much synergy, but just being a -2, when you are Crobatting so often with this deck, it actually can be a valid include, especially because you can just simply carrier it back for the moments when Evolution Roar is helpful. Oranguru doesn't have that same carrier synergy, but it can be a good way to protect things like Raihan to the top of your deck, so that you're less worried about Marnie. Rotom could be an interesting sort of mini engine that you have going on in the deck. Like I said, when you have so much early Crobat draw, Rotoming and just playing like 3 Rotom Phone in your deck as like a mini package could mean that your opening Crobat is basically going to have a much higher chance of hitting, you know, your turn 1 Capture Energy and all these other vital pieces to have much better early game options. And then in every other instance, it's just an option to carry her back whenever you need to fill up the numbers for Pokemon. And Yampa's another interesting one. It means we play some questionable cards in the deck, like Pokeball and Great Ball, but the Yampa being a means of recovering these would mean that whenever we are using our rescue carriers, we have access to dig deeper into the deck and hit things like Pokeball heads, flips, or if you're digging with Great Ball and actually hit a Crobat, hit an Eldegoss, they become far stronger cards, really. So it's the reason why Yampa's not in here and Rotom aren't in here is that these aren't like the strongest cards in a vacuum, but they do have some minor upside synergy when you are spamming these abilities. For the matchup overview, then, I think it's kind of awkward against the single strike matchups. Oh, sorry, the fusion strike matchups, I should say. Genesect has natural resistance, which is just really, really awkward. And Mew has inbuilt, well, firstly, really good early game pressure because it can turn to 210 plus and can get through even caped Tsareenas quite easily. But also they can jump back into the deck if ever they're short on damage or anything like that. So when you're a 2-hit KO deck like Tsareena is, you find it quite difficult to deal with their potential healing. That's also why I have Inteleon VMAX as one of the more awkward matchups. I know Jolteon is also a healing deck, but I think Inteleon has much more direct damage. It's two-shotting the Tsareenas way more easily. And at the same time, they're probably playing a higher count of Cheryl than the Jolteon deck. And you'll see that the spread decks actually aren't too bad of a matchup here, because you can so easily just like leave no Pokemon in play whatsoever, have no bench, because you know Thunder Rumble is base 100, Max Phantom's base 130, Gale Thrust is base 150. You just sit with one Tsareena active. Even with quick shootings, you're basically always out of range. So it means that you're never offering up bench threats for the opponents, and that just makes it very easy, and their damage output becomes really crummy. So even with Jolteon doing some healing, you can try and do a similar deal here with the Tsareena, not allowing a lot of Pokemon on the bench at all, so that they really don't take the benefits of their whole spreading approach here. And I think that's a really nice punish, actually, for the amount of spread that we have in the game. Some interesting matchup spreads going on here where you can punish Umbreon quite effectively. You can also punish Suicune, of course, because you are removing so many Pokemon from play, making it hard for them to one-hit KO you back and forcing Ludicolo's just on 2 prizes. And yet the spread decks don't really have a leg to stand on here. They can't really capitalize. They're forced into multiple quick shootings to try and pile in on a Tsareena, and even then that's not going to pay off for them a huge amount. So my closing thoughts is, yeah, you can punish spread quite aggressively, and you can punish single strike, which is actually pretty interesting, especially because I think Leafeon VMAX is a more precarious meta positioning going into this format. Mew having a natural free retreat, and Inteleon having a lot of Cheryl access, and even the Gengar decks for single strike having a lot of hiding darkness energies makes life a little bit more difficult for Leafeon. So Tsareena could actually fill the gap here and be an interesting grass type in the format where you offer up that good type coverage for the single strike matchups once again, and you can also punish the spread decks. I think naturally Tsareena isn't the most glamorous card, and the engine isn't necessarily intuitive, and it may be awkward on certain turns, but it doesn't feel all that powerful. And naturally, you know, you don't feel that strong. You're just a keep honest 2-hit KO 2-prize deck, really. But we've seen the likes of Suicune perform very well in the format just for being a very similar deal here. And you still have a ton of draw available. You don't have fleet-footed, but you have so many Crobat activations that you still draw a lot of cards via abilities here. So really, I think the deck's been undersold by a lot of people just because it's not too glamorous, but I think we could end up in an interesting meta position where Tsareena can have its heyday. So let me know what you guys think about Tsareena. Has it changed your mind on the card at all? Are you still just thinking, no, this is crazy, this is going to be low tier garbage? I can certainly foresee that as well, by the way, especially if there are hammers in the format. I think Tsareena gets terrible, and I think that could be a huge limiting factor for the deck. But regardless, I'll hear it all down below. Hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.